If you're in the market for a gaming handheld and your budget is around $500, should you get the Steam Deck or Switch 2? I've spent a good amount of time with both, and they're great, but each of these products were built for different types of people. So instead of saying which one is better, I want to go over the pros and cons and help you figure out which one is right for you. Okay, starting with prices. The Steam Deck costs $550 for the 512GB model and $650 for 1TB, but as of right now, they're all out of stock. You can thank the AI companies. The Switch 2 is $450, and it looks like the game bundles are also out of stock or being marked up from other sellers. I'll just compare the base models and see what the $100 difference gets you. I actually have a full review of the Steam Deck, so leave it in the cards and link it in the description box below. Alright, these two have different feelings in the hand. The Switch 2 is slim and light, and the Joy-Con 2s are noticeably bigger than the previous generation. The Switch 2 is nicer to hold than the original Switch, but it's still a flat handheld, and after some gaming, it feels a bit uncomfortable, especially if you have larger hands. The Steam Deck is thicker and heavier, but the ergonomics are a lot better. The grips are more rounded, and all the buttons and triggers are bigger. Holding it just feels more natural. Even the back buttons are in a nice spot. I can game for hours on this and not have any hand cramps. Both devices have the main buttons and ports along the top: power, volume, USB-C port, and headphone jack. But the Switch 2 has a game card slot and a second USB-C port on the bottom. The Steam Deck just has a micro SD card slot. On the back of the Switch 2, you find a built-in kickstand and a micro SD express card slot hidden underneath. One thing worth mentioning are the joysticks. The Steam Deck has symmetrical joysticks, which I prefer, and the Switch 2 has asymmetrical ones. But that's partly for the horizontal Joy-Con multiplayer in tabletop mode. And let's not forget that these snap on and off with magnets. So display sizes are pretty similar. The Steam Deck has a 7.6-inch, 90Hz OLED screen with a resolution of 2080 by 800, and the Switch 2 has a 7.9-inch, 120Hz LCD screen at 1080p. Both displays support HDR, and they look good, but the OLED screen is tough to beat. It is a lower resolution and 0.3 inches smaller, but OLED gives you those true blacks and vibrant colors. You probably can't tell from this video, but side by side, the Steam Deck has a brighter display and thinner bezels. Steam Deck at up to 1000 nits compared to the Switch 2's 450 nits. The UI is the first difference between these two devices. I say this a lot in my other comparison videos, but it's like iOS versus Android. The Switch 2 runs Nintendo's closed ecosystem, while the Steam Deck runs SteamOS, which is based on Linux and open source. The Switch 2 looks more user-friendly. You have your games lined up, colored icons on the bottom, and access to some quick controls. Everything is where you'd expect them to be. There's no customization or tweaking, it's like a plug-and-play thing. The Steam Deck, on the other hand, has a more advanced UI. You have your games, and the bottom has what's new, friends, and recommended. Unlike the Switch 2, the menu and quick settings look a little bit basic, but you can go crazy on this. Settings is very detailed and customizable. Quick settings lets you dial down on performance and even install some plugins. For someone who's a regular console gamer, it can be a lot, but for the tech people, it's a lot of fun to play with. Neither one is better, it just depends on which one you prefer. The games are the biggest reason you picked one over the other. The Switch 2's biggest advantage are those first-party games. So you have Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Kirby, and these are only on Nintendo hardware. Well, you can play older titles on a Steam Deck, but that can be a whole separate video. Right now, I'm seeing Pokopia, is that how you pronounce it, being the most popular game, and you can't go wrong with Mario Kart World. It's also worth noting that the Switch 2 is backwards compatible with Switch 1 games, and Nintendo added a new feature called Handheld Boost Mode, which allows the game to run in 1080p instead of 720. The Steam Deck plays your entire Steam library, and any game that's verified will work without any issues. The other games still run, but they might have smaller text, or you need to use the cursor. Most of the games I play are story-driven, so Stellar Blade, Wuthering Waves, Expedition 33, all of which are not on Switch 2. Rebirth will be out on June 3rd, and since it's Steam, I can play the same games on my gaming PC, a different handheld, and the upcoming Steam machine. If you want to see my gaming PC build, I'll link it down below. Then there's sales. and Steam has the best ones I've seen. Seasonal, publisher, and weekend deals. I bought over 10 games for like $100. Now, I'm not saying Nintendo doesn't have sales, they're just not as good. There was one for Mario Day, and some holiday ones here and there. Switch 2 does support older titles, but they're locked behind a paywall. Nintendo Switch Online is $20 a year, and it's not bad compared to PlayStation and Xbox. With an online plan, you have access to select games from Nintendo, Game Boy, and Super Nintendo. For N64, Game Boy Advance, and GameCube, you'll need the expansion pack, which is $50 per year. But no matter which one you choose, you also get online multiplayer, cloud saves, and game chat. Steam Deck has no monthly fees. You can play online with no subscription required. You can also play other games as well as streaming. I have EmuDeck, which takes some setup, and you just copy your ROMs legally and start playing some Nintendo classics. I even have Zenless Zone Zero as a non-Steam game, and it works, not great, but decent enough. And there's remote play built in Steam, and it lets me run a game in max settings from my PC and stream it right on here. There's even Chiaki for the PS5's remote play. I won't go into too much detail, but specs aren't everything. The Switch 2 is technically more powerful, and it shows in modern games and when docked. The Steam Deck is on the older side, and the same games don't run as well without any workarounds. That said, for indie games and emulation, the Steam Deck holds up fine. I set my expectations low, and I've been happy with it. Games on Switch 2 are very optimized, so they run in 1080p for handheld mode and 4K when docked. You don't need to worry about performance issues or graphics. It's a simple download and play. Some games on Steam Deck run fine without any tweaking, but for others, you need to dive into settings to get better performance. Battery life is similar on both, about 2 to 3 hours for newer games. And luckily, this isn't the smartphone industry, so a charger is included in the box. For my testing, the Steam Deck charges about twice as fast as the Switch 2. Speakers on both devices sound good, but the Steam Deck is louder and punchier. Here's a sound test. The fans on Steam Deck do kick in a little more, and they're noisier. It doesn't affect the gaming experience that much, but it's something to keep in mind. The Steam Deck has a lot to offer in terms of customization, and the Switch 2, not so much. Yeah, you can remap a button or two, but that's basically it. Steam Deck has a built-in performance menu that lets you set the refresh rate, TDP limit, and GPU clock speed. There's even an overlay that shows you different activities. But the real fun is with Decky Loader. Some people aren't a fan of frame generation, but this lets me enjoy AAA games on here. Before, I could barely get 30 FPS. Steam Grid DB is a quick and easy way to change the artwork. CSS and Audio Loader allows me to personalize the home screen. My games can be centered for a cleaner look, percentages can show up for brightness and audio, and I can change the sound effects to mimic a Switch 2. The Steam Deck also has desktop mode, so you can browse the web, install apps, and watch videos. It's like a mini PC. On the hardware side, the Steam Deck was designed to be user serviceable. I upgraded the storage to 2 TB, and I read you can replace the joysticks, faceplates, and battery. Valve is pretty open about letting people mod it. The Switch 2 is the opposite. It's more of a closed system, but some people might like the simple things. The Switch 2 comes with more accessories. You get a dock, HDMI cable, and Joy-Con straps, while the Steam Deck comes with a carrying case. If you want to play on a TV, you need to buy a separate dock. Both devices have a lot of similar accessories. I have a screen protector on mine, and a power bank will work on either device. Skins can be applied, and there's also some joystick caps. If you mainly want to play Nintendo's exclusive games, and you just want something simple and easy to use, the Switch 2 makes the most sense. If you already have a large Steam library and like to tinker around with different settings and mods, the Steam Deck is the better fit. Personally, I've been using my Steam Deck a lot more these days. Maybe it's just a phase, or I'm not interested in Switch 2 games at the moment. Would you get the Steam Deck or Switch 2? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you'll be notified when I post new videos. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye!